Hello, everybody. I am Sapna Mahadevan, public speaking expert at PlanetSpark. And today, once again, I am back with another interesting and really absorbing episode of the Fiction Story Writing Masterclass. Yes, I know last episode I told you that we will be doing the stand up comedy vertical and that I will be bringing out the improv comedy episode to you. But due to some unforeseen circumstances, we have shifted or rescheduled that particular episode for tomorrow. And definitely we'll look out for the stand up comedy vertical with the subtype as improv comedy for tomorrow. But for today, we have again a special episode for all our dear viewers, and it is everything to do about story writing. Yes. So I get a hi there from Divija. Hello, Divija. Thanks a lot for joining the live. We have Arv here. Khyati says hello. Pragya says good day. Okay, lovely. Thanks a lot for all of your messages, and I hope you all also had a wonderful day today. Yes. So let's get going with today's episode. It is Fiction Story Writing Masterclass, and we all have to unleash the writer in us. And it is really guaranteed that all of us have certain stories, something or the other that is there in our minds, which we want to probably tell the whole world about. Yes, if you come to think about it, a story is not only what you read in the storybooks, right? If you come back from school, when a child narrates all the happenings on that particular day to their parents, that's also a story in itself, isn't it? The child narrates it in a story format, like as if having certain sequence of events. There's always a problem that uh, aroused in that particular on that particular day, and then they try to solve it. Yes, so they try and make it interesting as well, with all of the actions and the way that they eagerly want to narrate everything that happened on a particular day to their parents, right? So if you come to think about this, then all the conversations that we have with different people in our lives, with our friends and family members, all of them have the virtue of storyteller, right? So let's try and gain some knowledge on how we can effectively communicate our stories to the outside world, and whatever thoughts and wishes and all the fantasies that we have about the story world, whatever it is that we want to tell through our stories to the people, let us learn how we can be doing that effectively, right? So yes, let's go ahead with today's episode. Pooja Piyush Salwan, hi there. Thanks a lot for joining the live. And yes, so let me take you through the coming up segment, which is going to show you the plethora of activities that we have specially planned for our dear viewers. So for today, we will be bringing a classic story and breaking it down into its various elements so that we give you a wonderful explanation and a nice understanding of how you can be writing stories all by yourself. Yes. So the coming up segments, they have the introduction of the title, then more about what the title suggests and who is the author of that particular book. Then we speak about the essentials. These are prerequisite elements that we definitely need to focus on while we write a story all by ourselves. Yes. Now, after this, there is also a fun segment that we have for today, which is Think Like a Pro. So you need to put on your thinking caps, think clearly, and give me answers to the questions that I pose. And there's quiz time as well. We will be also giving you information about how you can write an engaging plot. And there are synonymous words for building up your vocabulary. There is recommendation of the day, and how can we forget the amusing icebreaker round? Yes, so we do have icebreaker questions as well, which will keep coming up every now and then. And finally, the interesting part for today's episode, the breakdown of a classic, is that we also bring the story in a nutshell. Yes. So, are we all ready? Give me some cues, some signals in the chat box here so that I can get started with my episode of today. You can maybe give me a thumbs up or write to me here any thoughts, anything that you want to share with me. I am all ears waiting to hear back from my lovely audience and from the little children watching me in today's live. So, yes, please do go ahead and type out your comment in the chat box here, and I would definitely be reading one and all, right? So, let me give you some time. We will go further with our episode, and you can take your time in typing out all of your comments, right? So let's move ahead to the first icebreaker question that we have. Here it is: never have I ever watched a horror movie. Okay, so that's the first icebreaker question. Divija says she's excited, and I'm loving this, right? That's the energy that we need here. Yes. Wow, Divija, Sareen, thanks a lot for that comment. I am equally excited, just like you, to bring this episode out to you. Yes. And I'm sure that all of my audience members here, not only the little young children, but also the other people who are watching me, will be really excited in hearing out stories, right? So let me tell you, stories are not at all something that adults don't like. Yes, we all love to watch movies, and movies are also uh, nothing but storytelling, isn't it? Yes, Divija says yes to that. And I think this yes is an answer to the icebreaker question here, right? Never have I ever watched a horror movie. Divija says yes. Okay, I have watched a horror movie many a times, but let me tell you, I am not a big fan of it. So kind of like I always try and see something which calms me and not something which gives me anxiety, maybe, right? So not a fan though, but yes, I have watched a couple of horror movies, and yes is the answer that I get here. Okay, no is another one that I get from R. Lovely. Thanks again for all of these answers, and let's get going to our next segment here. And before that, I get another comment here from Divija. She says, I like comedy movies more than horror. Yes, Divija, you're my type. High five to that. And let's move ahead to the next segment. Now, I'm going to tell you all about the book. And the title that we have cherry picked for today is The Ugly Duckling. So many of you might already know the story, but even then, I would suggest that please do stay tuned in here with me and hear the story in from me. And there are a lot of fun segments as well that we can be playing here in today's episode. So I will be letting you know all the details about this particular story, The Ugly Duckling, and also give you tips and tricks on how you can write a story just like this one all by yourself. Yes. So do get inspired with the story that we have here for today's episode, The Ugly Duckling. And let me tell you more about the title and also about the author. So the title suggests that the story is about a not so attractive duckling. Yes, that's why the name The Ugly Duckling. And we will come to know what the story is when we move to our segment named Story in a Nutshell, right? So before that, let's understand. Okay, so before the author, we also have another icebreaker question come up, which is: never have I ever seen a solar eclipse. So, anyone here who has seen a solar eclipse, do give me a shout out in the chat box, maybe a thumbs up. I have seen a solar eclipse, a partial solar eclipse, and it's really exciting, isn't it? The sky turns dark, and yes is one of the comments that I get here. Parth has seen a solar eclipse. That's wonderful. No is another response that I get there. So, older children who have learnt about solar eclipse in their science classes might want to tell me whether they have seen a solar eclipse. Divija says never, and she has seen a lunar one though. Okay, great. Um, okay, lovely. So with all of those comments there, I'm going to move ahead and give you some information about who the author is. So, The Ugly Duckling has been written by Hans Christian Andersen. And let me tell you more about the author here. He was born on April 2nd, 1805, in Denmark, and he was a prolific writer, best known for his fairy tales, which have been translated into more than 125 languages. That's a whopping number, right? And by the time he died in Copenhagen in 1875, his work was known all over the world. That's how famous he became. And ever since its publication in the year 1845, Hans Andersen's The Ugly Duckling has been a favorite with generations of children around the world. So, yes, we can all totally be in agreement as to why this particular story became so very famous. Yes, a lot of morals that it gives you, interesting story, and the insights and the wise sayings that it has, that also is something that children should imbibe from, right? So Hans Christian Andersen was the author behind The Ugly Duckling. And let's also understand what's this particular genre, right? So, audience members here watching me can, maybe if you have an inkling of what that genre is for that story, or if you know which category you can bucket it into, then please do go ahead and write down in the chat box the genre that you will like to categorize this into. So, is it a comedy story? Is it a story full of horror? Is it something which is maybe adventurous, or is it a fairy tale? So you may want to write down the category that you would want to put it into. Yes. And I'm going to give you only 60 seconds. Time is clicking by fast. And okay, I get fable as one of the answers here. Fable because maybe it has wise sayings, right? So let me tell you, it can be termed as children's literature or even fairy tale fable. I can give that to you. And moving ahead to the next segment, it is again another icebreaker question. Never have I ever seen a talking parrot. And I would answer in affirmative to that, because I have seen a talking parrot. Yes. And it's so cute to see them talk. They sometimes mimic you, and sometimes they have some general phrases that they have been taught, like good morning and how do you do and what is your name, right? It really feels lovely to hear that from them. And Divija says, she gives me a laugh emoji and then she says she has. Wow, lovely. I remember when I was in school, a young little girl, maybe in the third or fourth grade, I think. One of my neighbors had a parrot, and those days I used to have a plate made out, and that's how I used to go to school. And the parrot, it used to always climb onto my hand, perch himself here, and then climb onto my braid and sit on the top of my head. It seems so funny to just talk about that right now, but that was such a special feeling when he used to do that. And sometimes he also used to talk. So that's the connect that we have with animals, isn't it? And I simply love and adore animals. Yes. So yes, I am getting a lot of answers here. Some are mostly no. Divija says yes. And wow, that's a lovely feeling, isn't it, Divija? So yes, thanks a lot for all of these answers. And I missed one of the comments here. um, Divija also says that, okay, so she was guessing the category for our story, and you are exactly on point. Fairy tale it is. So thanks again for all of the responses. And let's move ahead to the next segment that we have here, which is the essentials, right? So if you want to write a story just like The Ugly Duckling, which is a fairy tale, then what are the elements that you would want to consider? Yes. So the three elements, let me give you. Okay, here I'm missing one slide here. Let me just check. Okay, so no problem. The three elements that we have here will be the protagonist, the setting, and what is the problem statement, right? So before you start writing, you need to think clearly about these three elements, and this is what is going to put your category into a fairy tale bucket, and also give it the much needed interest that your audience would like to have. Yes. So the protagonist, the setting, and also what's the problem statement or the conflict in your story. These are the things that you need to consider. The first one, let me talk about this, the protagonist. In this particular story, since we are breaking down the Ugly Duckling today, I'm going to give you all the essentials, uh, per se, the Ugly Duckling story, right? So then we can have an understanding of how we can be writing our own stories with these essentials out here, right? So in the Ugly Duckling story, let me tell you, the central protagonist was the Ugly Duckling, of course. There are other animal characters as well, including the duckling's family and a group of swan as well. Now, the duckling was always undermined by other animals for his appearance, and even his own siblings mocked him. Yes, so these were the protagonists that we saw in the story, the central characters. And the setting of the story, let me tell you, it has a fableish setting, since it is a fairy tale, and it has a lot of elements which are fantastical. That means that fantasy elements are elements which cannot happen in the outworld, right? In the real world, you never see them happening. So when we say that the ducklings family spoke, and how they articulated their thoughts, then it has all of those fantasy elements, right? So this story has a fable setting, and it is based in a lush green forest with all types of creatures living there, with a pond or a water body in particular where the duckling and his family lived, right? So that's the setting of our story. And what is the conflict here? The main conflict is the argument over the looks of the duckling, and his unlikely appearance from his other siblings, yes, which gave other animals a chance to mock at him, and thereby the duckling, poor duckling, it underestimated himself, right? So the conflict is resolved when the duckling meets the other creatures like himself, and then comes to know that there's a twist in the story. Yes, so this is the conflict here in this particular story. The duckling is always mocked at, and always looked down upon because of its unusual appearance from its siblings, and a very loud and clear shout out message or a wise saying that this particular story gives us, which we will be coming on to in the later segments here. But keep a lookout for the message that the story gives us. Yes, so these were the essentials here. The first one was the protagonist or the central character, then we had the settings, and also the conflict or the problem statement, right? Now, once you have all of these three elements planned up, then it's going to be comparatively easier for you to write your own story. But again, in the later segments, we're also going to show you some plot building pointers, which means that apart from having the essentials correct, we also want some elements which is going to enthrall our audiences, right? So for that, for making our story engaging and interesting for our audiences, what are the different elements that we will be adding on to this? We will be seeing that in the later segment. Yes, so after the essentials, let me take you through one of the synonymous words for today, which is underestimate, right? So underestimate will have synonyms: underrate, miscalculate, or misjudge. Yes, so do jot down all of these words in your journal, in some place maybe where you can keep on revising the words, and uh, you know effectively use it as a ready reckoner. Yes, so the synonymous word for today, the first one is underestimate, which also has similar word meanings: miscalculate, misjudge, or underrate. Yes, now after that synonymous word, let me quickly move ahead to the next icebreaker question: never have I ever killed a cockroach. That's the next question that I have here in my screen. And that's so icky, isn't it? Killing a cockroach. Have you ever done that? Um, Never is the comment that I get there. And Prisha gives me some kind of an emoji there. Okay. No is the comment that I get here. Great. Not a cockroach. Okay, so R says not a cockroach. So that answer indicates that not a cockroach though, but something else maybe. Yes. Okay, so thanks again for all of those answers there. And one more coming up here. Divija says, I did. Okay, so Divija is guilty of killing a cockroach, right? Yes. Wow. So let me show you Divija's comment here. There it is. All laughs. And yes, with that, let's move ahead to our next segment. I'm having a fun time here with all my lovely audience members here today. And thanks for being such a participative audience for here for today's episode, right? And for taking time out and to listen patiently to and I really appreciate the will that all of you have to self learn. Yes, the will to learn is something that is should be kept on top of everything else, because if you have the will to learn, then you are going to accomplish all of your desires, right? So that's the first thing that should be on the top of your minds. And yes, with that, let us move ahead to another fun segment that we have now. Here it is. It is called the Think Like a Pro segment. I'm going to show you some famous dishes from around the world. It's going to be all mouth watery and I don't know, it's going to be really scrumptious. So just look out for all the pictures that I have for you here and give me the name of the dish in the chat box, right? So simple, isn't it? So here is the first one for you all. That is really fab, isn't it? Looks so very delicious. And what's the name of this dish? Quickly in the chat box, without taking much time, if you can give me the answer in the chat box. Noodles, yes. Chinese noodles is another answer that I get there. Okay, what else? Delicious is the comment that I get there. And Virendra Jain gives me a like here. Thanks a lot for that. So noodles is the comment that I get. And let me tell you specifically, this is chow mein, right? So now that you know what we are looking out for here, there is the second picture for the day, and that's absolutely delicious, isn't it? Okay, so name this dish for me. That is correct. It is pizza. Of course, we all know this one, and a favorite of many, right? Ritu Gautam tells me Hakka noodles. Can give that to you. Divija also giving me the specific name. Thanks a lot again. And pizza is of course correct. Here it is. And now moving on to the third one. What is that? Okay, a very popular Indian dish. Waiting for some comments to come up here. Um, who is drooling here? Give me a shout out in the chat box, people who are drooling right now. Yes, that is correct. It is chicken tandoori. Wow, that's wonderful. You all knew the correct answer. And here we go to the last one for the day. Brace yourselves. There it is. Although I am a vegetarian, I definitely can make out what the name of that dish is. That's a culinary experience in itself, isn't it? So presentation, and just look at that. Wow, isn't it? And what are the answers that I'm getting here? I can't find any answers come up. Okay, so there it is. Divija says she's a vegetarian and looks like a lobster. Ritu again says lobster. So Divija, you are, I think, exactly on point. And yes, that is a lobster. So thanks again for all of those answers. And kudos to all of you who gave me correct answers. I think we all are drooling right now, isn't it? So, yes, let's move ahead quickly to the next segment. And here we talk about plotting the plot. So the three elements again, which makes the story interesting, right? These are the three interesting elements: the conflict, the resolution, and the moral. So every story, if you come to think about it, has one or the other problem statement. Cinderella had a problem, Little Red Riding Hood had a problem, If you think of Spider-Man movies, they have some sort of a problem where Spider-Man has to come to the rescue, right? Any story, any story which is your favorite, it will definitely have a problem statement, and the hero figure, whosoever that is, the male or the female protagonist, they would be coming ahead to help the people in distress, right? So conflict and the resolution become an integral part of a story, right? And here we are adding on to it, the third element becomes the moral. And let's delve deeper and understand in greater detail what all of this means. The main conflict in the Ugly Duckling is that the duckling was constantly mocked by all of the other animals because he was now not as good looking as his siblings, which made him question himself, and that is also underestimate himself, and he lost his confidence by doing so, right? So that was the biggest conflict in this particular story. And of course the resolution was that the duckling finally gets to meet a herd of swans who welcomed him warmly, because as it seems to be, the ugly duckling, when it grew up, it turned into a beautiful swan rather than a duck. So he regained his confidence in the process, right? So that was how the story gets its resolution. And finally we get a moral, that the lesson of the story, which is that you must not underestimate yourself and never question yourself just because of the mockery of the society. So always be self sufficient, trust your abilities, and have faith in yourself. Yes, you are your biggest critique, so you need to always keep your head high and never ever doubt yourself. That's the moral that we learn from this particular story, and it is something that we all, if parents are watching me in today's live, then you definitely have to inculcate this particular moral in your children, seeing how the world is going today, right? And if children watching me in today's live, you definitely need to get this drilled into your heads, that you never ever self doubt yourself, right? So always trust your abilities. That's the one moral that this particular story gives us. And when we move ahead to the story in a nutshell, we are also going to see how this moral comes to light, right? So after these three plot building pointers, let me now move ahead to another synonymous word for today, which is mockery. So what is the meaning of someone mocking you? That means that they are ridiculing you, humiliating you, or scorn could also be another word, or even scoff, right? So these are all similar word meanings like mockery. And what should we do when people mock us? We should turn a blind eye. Yes. So that's an idiom which goes to say that we need to ignore or neglect, right? So that's what it means. Turn a blind eye when people mock us, and do have trust in your own abilities, right? So that's the synonymous word. And while teaching that synonymous word to you, I also incidentally gave you one idiom. So you may want to jot that down as well and use them in your, conversations with friends and family members. It's definitely going to make an impression, right? So with that synonymous word, let me quickly move ahead to our quiz time. And if you have been listening to me intently, then you're going to give me all correct answers, and I'm going to get to know that in a while from now, right? So I'm not going to put you into any pressure, but here is the first quiz time question. Let's enjoy while playing this quiz. Where did the duckling and his family live? That's the first question here. And expecting some quick answers in the chat box. These are pretty simple questions. Piece of cake, really. So, in a pond is the answer that Dafia gives me here. In the forest is another comment. So I can give you both of those answers are correct. But of course, the duckling will live in a pond in the forest, right? Now, second question coming up here. What was the basis of discrimination? So, what was that one thing for which the other creatures mocked the ugly duckling? In a lush green forest is what Divija gives me as an answer. And full points to you, Divija. You have been listening intently. You have all the correct words that you've given me here. So, yes, thanks again. Lily Chakrabarti, good evening to you too. Thanks a lot for joining the live. And today we are seeing breakdown of a classic. The story that we have cherry picked here is The Ugly Duckling. Yes. So the question that we are playing up here in the quiz time is, what was the basis of discrimination? And the answer that I get here is looks. That's correct. Appearance is also correct. Thanks again. The duckling was ugly. That's again correct. Yes, so the basis of discrimination was the duckling's appearance. That's right. Divija says the little duckling was very ugly, which was a reason for it being mocked. Quite on point. And thanks again for all of those answers there. Applause to all of you. And moving ahead to the third one, the ugly duckling wasn't actually a duckling. What kind of animal was he? The name of the animal. Virendra Jain, thanks for that like. And swan is the answer that I get there. Again, correct answer. It was a swan, and those were the questions for our quiz time. And now it's time to move ahead to the story in a nutshell. Yes. So, all of you waiting patiently for the story to unfold, let me give you the first theme that we have here, questioning self identity. Yes, Divija, that is correct. It was actually a swan. And with that, we move ahead to the story in a nutshell. Questioning self identity is the first theme that plays out, and here is how the story starts. One hot summer day on a farm, a mother duck sat on her nest and wondered when her eggs would hatch. Now, one fine day, the eggs started cracking and hatching, and tiny little ducklings started coming out of the shells one after another. The tiny ducklings flapped their wings and cried quack quack. The mother duck was happy to see all her ducklings except for the last one, which emerged as a strange looking duckling with gray feathers. Mother duck called out to all her ducklings for their first swim in the pond. She led all her children to the nearby pond and began teaching each duckling how to become a proper duck. All the ducklings quacked in joy except for the one with gray feathers, which made a crackling sound. So we can see here how this one duckling was different from the rest of them. The other ducklings started to stare at him and began to laugh. The ugly one hung his head in shame. Oh, poor fellow. Now, Divija says, yay, that's the comment that I have here. And yes, stories are really fun, isn't it? Wow. So, yes, that's how the story started out with the ugly ducklings. Here, different angles that we have to explore for our stories. Here it says it started in a farm, but yes, it also started in some of the forms of the stories. We also see that the setting was a lush green forest and it had a pond, right? So that's how it started. And now what happened next was, you can see that beautiful picture there of the mama duck with her cute tiny ducklings there. Yes, and the last one was the ugly duckling because it doesn't resemble all of its other siblings, right? So in due course of time, the mother duck and her duckling started to ignore him while the others practiced quacking and swimming, diving and splashing water all across the pond, right? Feeling dejected and unwanted, finally, one evening, the ugly duckling decided to leave his home in winter and ran away to live in a swamp all by himself. So, swamp is a place which is all marshy, and it decided that it would go by himself and live in a place all by himself without his mother and his siblings, right? On his way, the ugly duckling stumbled across a farmer who took pity on him and offered him food and shelter. However, the duckling was terrified of the farmer's mischievous children, so he again escaped that place. And that's how we see that the ugly duckling shows the first resilient step that it takes and shows courage to stay all by itself without people or the other creatures mocking at him, right? Now, before we move ahead to theme number 2, let me show you another synonymous word. Rajbala Singh gives me a like here. Thanks for that. And the synonymous word is stumbled. So stumbled will have similar word meaning strip, slip or totter, right? Now, moving on to theme 2 of our story, which has the theme of believing in yourself. Let's see what happened next. At last, as spring arrived, the duckling was happy that he could start swimming again in the lake. Now he wanted to try out swimming in the nearby lake, where he found a flock of beautiful swans swimming, and he gazed at their beauty. As the duckling had fully grown up, and he now approached the swans if he could join them, completely assured of rejection, because that's what it had seen from his early days. To his surprise, the swans welcomed him warmly. And while getting into the lake, he saw his reflection in the water and was surprised and taken aback to see that he was not an ugly duckling anymore. He had transformed into a beautiful swan. Soon, he joined the flock of beautiful swans and was happy to fly off with his newly found swan family. That's how we see the story getting a resolution. At the end of the story, the duckling returns to where he came from and emerges as a beautiful swan. At this point, he is the most admired animal in the vicinity. It is made clear that he does not have control on who accepts him, but he definitely has control on how he feels about the situation. This reinforces the message that children should not give up on who they are, but at the same time suggests that people eventually find acceptance for their true personality, right? So that's the picture that we see there is not got updated from today's episode, right? Um, yes, it's not got updated from the last episode, but that's the moral that we get here, right? So the moral that this particular story gives us is keep on believing in yourself even if society mocks you, right? And this is something that you need to also jot down someplace in your if you have a notice board kind of a setup at your home or at your study table, maybe you can have all of these thoughts and wonderful sayings pinned up to your board so that you keep reading them and keep reinforcing them within yourself every now and then, right? So this was the one insight, the one message that this particular story gave you. And do let me know in the chat box if you had a wonderful time listening out to that story from me. If you enjoyed this session here, do give me a message in the chat box, and I would be really glad to have all of your comments, right? Now, with that, let's move ahead to the next synonymous word for today, which is reinforce, which means strengthen, fortify, and toughen. So, reinforce that you have the capability to do this, and keep saying that you can will mean that strengthen the thought or the resolve that you have, right? Now, after these synonymous words, we have the last segment to play. Rajbala Singh says, it was nice. Thanks a lot for your comment. And let's move ahead to the last segment for the day, which is again another fun segment. It is the jumbled words segment. This means that we will show you certain words which are all jumbled up, and you need to unjumble the letters and find out a meaningful word, which all the words are from today's episode. So it's going to be easy. Here is the first one for you. What is this word? Creature. That is correct. Creature is the correct word. And here we go to the second one. That was really quick, R. Thanks a lot for that. And this is something that I think all of you are going to give me correct answers for. Divija also says creature. That is correct. And the second word that we have for today is duckling. Of course, that's right again. Duckling it is, absolutely. And the third word, here it is. What is this word? Duckling is correct. And look is the word that's correct again. So, yes, wonderful job. Thanks for all of those answers. And with that, we come to the end of the episode for today. Rajbala, creature is correct. And yes, let's move ahead to our next segment, which is the project work that I would like all of you to be doing. And So, for the project work, you can implement all the learnings that you have had from today's episode. Think about what were the essentials that we spoke of, how we can make our story engaging and absorbing for our audiences, and inspired by the story here, The Ugly Duckling. Try writing your own story with all of these fantastical creatures, and try putting pen to paper and write a wonderful story which you can maybe read out to your family and friends. Yes, so that's the one project work that we have for today's episode. With that, we come to the end of our episode for today. For tomorrow, we will be back with improv comedy. And until the time we meet next tomorrow, I would want all of you to take good care of yourselves, have a happy time, and keep smiling. Bye bye.